So I'm still hung up on the body fat analogy. I've been thinking about it sitting back there, and my analogy with livestock identification traceability is reading glasses. So not quite as severe as the body fat test, but Katie and I were talking earlier, when we first started talking about livestock identification traceability in 1996, when we started IMI Global, I didn't have reading glasses. Well, since that time, I had to move to reading glasses, and then we talked about it, you left them all over the house, right? And then someday you're in a situation, a presentation probably, and you couldn't even read your slides anymore. So now I've moved to progressive glasses, which took me like a year to get used to. So that's how much transformation I've gone through personally, and that's without the body fat analogy, because again, I'm not even going to go there. Since we first started talking about it. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon talking to you all. And I'm too short to actually see my slides here. I'm going to have to get, back in meats judging days, you had a crate. Those aren't allowed anymore. But that helped us get to see the ribeye when we were in the meats judging cooler. So today, those of you who heard me talk in the past, I'm trying to engage audiences about why to do what we do and to engage in the programs that they engage with us. When I was listening to the discussions this morning, and then also listening to Glenn really try to challenge us about specifically the question around livestock identification traceability, I felt it really important to kind of step back about who we are, where we came from, and where we're at today specific to the question around livestock identification and traceability. So in 1996, who in this room was here when we were talking about it? You probably had 50 vendors that were coming to these conferences that were trying to get together to implement a national animal identification program. Raise your hand if you were in the room at that time. Raise it high. So many of you were in the room, right, at that time. We had a lot of interest. We had serious motivation. A lot of companies like IMI Global, we were founded in 1996. We had a group called the Beef Information Exchange. So all of us were getting together, and we were talking about how we as private industry databases would get together and have an oversight that would allow for animal health officials to peek into those databases and get the information that they needed while we continued to do what we did as data management service providers. So that's where we started. And then interest died. A lot of our competitors went out of business in that time frame. We had to figure out how to survive. Baxter Black tells it the best, that when you're in survival mode, you really are going to try to figure out how you add value to your customers. So the way that we evolved was said, okay, the impetus for mandatory animal identification traceability is gone. We have to figure out how to continue to do what we do and add value to our customers. So we started working with private systems, private supply chains that wanted to share data up and down those supply chains. The only way to effectively do that is start to standardize animal identification and traceability systems to enable that data transfer. So we started off in private industry. Then we had 2003. We lost access to all of our very valuable international beef export markets in 2003 because of our incidence of BSE. So at IMI Global, we quickly pivoted because we had been working with some systems under the USDA Process Verify program and said, okay, let's try to use that platform to try to get back into these markets. So at IMI Global, we started working with packers because they were the first ones trying to figure out how they were going to get back in. And we started working with them to build export verification programs under that USDA Process Verify program. Then it became evident that those supply chains needed to be approved. So we started working with feedlots and created a standardized program for feedlots and then cow-calf producers. So that's how we've evolved. So today, we're all about verification and certification of what I'm going to call credence attributes for these supply chains that are demanding them today. One thing that's really important in our system is precision. So a lot of times when you talk about traceability systems, you're talking about breadth and depth and the level of precision. When you're talking about qualifying an individual animal for a market or not, precision becomes really important. We are a private third-party database today. So you've had discussions about many of those systems out there. That's what we are. We're a private third-party database, completely voluntary, focused on market animals. So we are focused on helping suppliers in the beef supply chain access certain markets or enable their animals to be verified and eligible for certain domestic programs, whatever those programs might be. So we're capturing varying degrees of data depending on that specific program. 100% of that data is confidential to the person who owns that data. The only thing that is required to transfer is whether or not that specific animal qualifies for that specific verification or certification program. That information is transferred up in the supply chain. Let's see. So the oversight group to what we do today is USDA AMS with their USDA Process Verify program. That's important because we've talked a lot about standards, the way data is transferred, and how that oversight body looks. This is a good example. What we've put together and what's been very successful for export market access has been that government layer with that private industry partnership, and it's been very successful for what we use it for today. These are some of the programs that you commonly hear about in the beef industry, and you can see there are different requirements for each set of those cattle. And those cattle requirements are based on the export verification instruction for a given country. What we've tried to do at IMI Global is simplify that as much as possible and start with a very base source and age verification program. And now we've modified that based on China exports and what's required for the China market. And then as a producer or a supply chain wants more things added to it, we can bundle that in with the verification. This is an example of how cattle are being marketed with certain credence attributes that have been verified and are traceable in our system for different programs. So this is just a snapshot out of the Superior catalog, livestock catalog. With all of these programs that I just showed you, identity preservation is required, credence attributes are verified, standardized animal identification and reading technology is key. All the feedlots that are in here, all the customers that are in these systems, Tyson sitting over here, can tell you how critical it is to standardize animal identification and really continue to work for technology around reading application. So today for our programs, again, just to standardize it, we require 100% RFID tags. For our very base program, which is source and age verification, those tags must go in at the source of origin. Now, back in the days when we were working with Japan's requirements, we could back verify cattle. Tags didn't have to go in at the source of origin. You could use group method of identification. Since China's export verification requirements came out, we changed that because China's base requirements is 100% program compliant tags going in at the source of origin. So today, we only allow 840 tags, which are official ID. And I'll tell you a little bit about today versus even 5 years ago. Every conversation we have with our producer customers, we tell them we highly encourage you to use 840 tags because we can't tell you what the state regulations are and where those cattle are going to move. So if you don't know the buyer of those calves, we highly recommend you put an 840 tag so you won't get into any issues with state regulations. Now, they can still choose to use a manufacturer-coded RFID tag, but that comes with some risk, and we're having some issues with cattle moving just this fall. Dr. Rohr is still in the room. He knows about that. Those tags have to meet the USDA PVP's requirements for one-time use, tamper-evident, uniquely numbered. That's the benefit of these tags in our systems. So the traceability components are different. They're specific to country requirements. Source verification is required. Bookend in our system is a minimum. At the end of the day, Tyson has to be able to verify that these cattle qualify for these different markets when those tags are read at the plant. So there is no room for error. And I'll tell you, precision with our system, again, is critical, and we spend each and every day working primarily on tag issues. Simple things like we'll ship a set of tags to a producer that has been verified for source and age. His age is identified with a birth date on that group of calves, which is identified with the group of calves, and he uses some leftover tags and then puts those in the calves next year, so the age is too old. So then we have to go through a whole investigative process to get those tags qualified when they read at the plant. So those are some of the issues we deal with each and every day. We have a public online tag lookup that allows producers that read those tags at each stage of movement to verify the claims that those cattle are verified for. This is what's driving the uptake of these systems, and we've seen dramatic increases in uptake. It's the premiums that you see these supply chains offering back in the market for cattle that qualify for these different programs today. So the value add is what's driving uptake of verification and certification programs. Now, one thing that we did a few years back to make it easier for animal health officials, because we know how hard their job is allow them for a portal to ping our system to see if a tag shows up. So it's an online lookup. If it's a manufacturer-coded tag in our system, it'll ping and say it shows up in the system, please call IMI Global. Because it's not an official tag, then what we do is call that producer and request permission to give their contact number to that state animal health official, and that's how we've handled that through the years. And to date, we haven't had anybody deny us the ability to do that. So I've kind of zipped through this, and I will turn it over to the next person and take questions later. Thank you.